Welcome to the Commonwealth Matters. I'm Richard Nelson, Executive Director of the Commonwealth Policy Center here in the Kentucky Attorney General's office with Attorney General Daniel Cameron. Daniel, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Richard. I appreciate you being back. I always enjoy our time together. It's fun, and obviously glad to visit with the viewers today.
Yeah. Well, hey, you and I have crossed paths a number of times just in the last week or so. I saw you at the Kentucky Right to Life annual banquet in Louisville.
That's right.
You spoke. You actually had the people on their feet. Very proud of you for leading when it comes to sanctity of life issues. Then we crossed paths just the other day here in the Kentucky Capitol. You spoke at another Right to Life event. There were several different pro-life groups there. Good attendance from people all across the state in support of House Bill 91. So I'd like to start out on Right to Life issues since this is front and center.
Yeah.
House Bill 91, Attorney General Cameron, is the bill, the constitutional amendment that simply says that abortion is not a protected right under the Kentucky Constitution, nor shall public tax dollars be used to procure an abortion. Tell us about that bill, why you're in favor of it. Was that a necessary bill? Some people were saying, that those on the other side were saying that it's not necessary. This is overkill. It's not a state issue right now, but give us your thoughts, if you would, on that.
Well, let me just step back and say I've been really proud of the work that the General Assembly has done over the course of this legislative session, and grateful for the way that you and your viewers pray for the members and pray for courage and just strength to do what is right and to reflect the values of the Commonwealth. And this bill, in my judgment, really does that in terms of making sure that we are reflecting the values and representing to the fullest extent the humanity and compassion of Kentuckians in all 120 counties. And so this bill, as you know, is really contingent on what the United States Supreme Court will do as it relates to Roe v. Wade. But it's important for this to be on the ballot come 22 because, again, it reflects the values of Kentuckians. We, again, and in my judgment, fully believe that the majority of Kentuckians feel that it's appropriate and necessary to stand up for those who cannot speak for themselves, to stand up and speak for the unborn. I say that as someone who's newly married. I say that as someone whose faith dictates that life in the womb is life that is valued and is to be protected. And I say that as someone who firmly believes that the Constitution provides for the protection of those that are in the womb. So this bill, House Bill 91, was important to pushing forward and making sure that we're doing everything we possibly can to stand up for the rights of the unborn.
The sponsor of that bill in the Kentucky House is Joe Fisher, and he said the reason why that was introduced was to prevent another Roe v. Wade from happening in Kentucky. Of course, we've got abortion on demand in this country through the federal court system. The U.S. Supreme Court found a right to abortion in the U.S. Constitution. It is expected that it's very possible the U.S. Supreme Court hands this issue back to the states. So Representative Fisher and others that supported that bill are saying we don't want this to be decided by the courts. We would rather have the legislature to decide this. So in a sense, this is restoring a balance of power. And the laws should be made through the legislative body,
That's right.
not through the courts. And so it does restore that balance that has really been out of balance. So many laws that legislatures, not just Kentucky's legislature, but other state legislatures, so many pro-life laws that are passed, they end up being challenged, and often courts strike them down. And that's unfortunate. So this does restore the balance of power. You shared something very interesting at the rally. Stirred people, they applauded when you shared the news about your campaign promise to fight to restore the sanctity of life all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary. And you'd shared some news about your fulfilling that campaign. Although you weren't campaigning, you really did fulfill that campaign promise. Tell us more about that.
Well, Richard, as you know, in the time before I actually was granted the opportunity to serve in this role as Attorney General, told people that on matters of life, we'll take those all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And what you're referring to and what I shared with folks out on the Capitol steps the other day is that the Supreme Court has actually granted a hearing for this office and for Kentuckians. I put the emphasis on Kentuckians because this represents our pro-life values represent all the men, women, and children of our 120 counties. They are going to hear our motion to intervene in a case or legislation related to House Bill 454, which puts a ban, as most of your folks know, on live dismemberment abortions. It's a tough and difficult topic to talk about. What we're talking about is a D&E procedure, dilation and evacuation procedure of a child from the womb. And what has occurred in the past and what House Bill 454 is seeking to address is in some instances those babies are still alive. And so they're being dismembered, they can feel pain, and they're being taken out of the womb. And what this bill does is say that we need to ensure that those babies, again, this is difficult to talk about because you and I don't want that to happen at all. But if it is to happen, we want to ensure that those babies are not alive when this procedure is occurring. We were defending that case in conjunction with the Beshear administration. Once they got an adverse ruling, the Beshear administration said, we're done. As many of your viewers can understand, they washed their hands of House Bill 454. They said enough is enough. I've said that it's the responsibility and the role of the Attorney General to defend the laws that are passed by the General Assembly, and then on a more personal basis, personal level, to defend the pro-life legislation that is passed by the General Assembly. And so we endeavored to do that at the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. We got a ruling that said we could not. We didn't allow that to stop us. We weren't deterred by that. We said we're going to go to the Supreme Court and have them decide this issue, and they're going to hear this case in the fall. I'm excited about it. We've got a really strong team that's working on this. Matt Kuhn, Brett Nolan, Chad Meredith. The list goes on and on of really bright and talented lawyers that are going to be working on this in the weeks and months ahead.
That's exciting that this case was accepted by the U.S. Supreme Court. How rare is that an Attorney General like yourself would appeal to the Supreme Court and they'll accept the case?
Well, it's very rare. They only take the cases of great magnitude and import. And this is a case that will certainly have important significance for Kentucky, but will have important significance for all of the country in terms of what it could say about an Attorney General's role in representing and defending the laws that are passed by our respective states. So I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be a case that will be remembered for a long time because of the import that it'll have outside of the Commonwealth, and it'll give us an opportunity to get back to the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals to make sure that we're defending House Bill 454.
General Cameron, could this be the case that the Supreme Court decides that somehow hands this issue of abortion policy back to the states? Could this be either a stepping stone, or is there potential for a major ruling here with this case?
Well, I think this is a first step, if you will. So what we've said to the Supreme Court, and they've accepted hearing arguments on it, is that we should have an opportunity to defend this pro-life legislation, House Bill 454. What's happened in the interim that makes it important that we have an opportunity to defend House Bill 454 is a June medical case. It's a decision that was recently made by the Supreme Court. It wasn't a win for pro-life advocates and supporters, but what it said was really from the Supreme Court's perspective, and in particular Chief Roberts' perspective, that we need to get away from essentially what's a balancing test, meaning we're going to look at the benefits versus the burdens as it relates to abortion procedures. What we need to be focused on is there a substantial obstacle in limiting abortion procedures? And so June Medical has provided a lot of hope to those in the pro-life community. And so what I'm optimistic about is that if we get a good ruling from the United States Supreme Court, it allows us to go back into the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals and advocate on behalf of House Bill 454 with the newfound knowledge of what we've learned from that June medical case.
Okay, very good. One more thing on the life issue, and then I want to move on to the next topic. The state legislature did empower you to defend Kentucky's pro-life laws, and I guess that puts you in this position. Is that correct?
Well, you're referring to House Bill 2?
House Bill 2, where in the past it was the governor and his Cabinet for Health and Family Services, where they had defended the laws. They took away that authority because he wasn't defending the laws. They gave that to you, and you have been executing the laws, pro-life policy, abortion policy in Kentucky.
And the other thing that it does, so where we ran into an issue, what you're referring to, is in the height of the pandemic, when Governor Beshear and CHFS said, we're going to stop non-essential medical procedures. Well, those procedures stopped except for abortion procedures. And so we wrote to CHFS saying, hey, you've listed out all of these non-essential services that need to stop because of the need for personal protective equipment and PPE and so on, but yet you're continuing to allow these abortion procedures to go on. That needs to stop, and CHFS did not agree to do that. And so now what the General Assembly has said is that if we're in the midst of a pandemic again, and if there's a decision to made on essential versus non-essential services, let's empower the Attorney General to be able to go in to these abortion providers and have those non-essential services stopped as well. So they've certainly given us a greater ability to be able to respond in the midst of a pandemic. And again, it just points back to the position that you started off with, which is that the legislature is in many ways trying to reinstate themselves as a co-equal branch of government. During the pandemic, the governor had a go-it-alone approach on decisions really that impacted Kentuckians all across the Commonwealth, shut down businesses, stop kids from being able to go to daycare, even attempted to shut down churches. Again, this was the General Assembly's response in many ways to making sure that they have a seat at the table in some of these important decisions.
Very good. Religious freedom is an important issue for you. Yesterday you joined a 12-state coalition to intervene in a lawsuit to defend religious freedom protections for federal contractors. 13 states, led by New York, is challenging a U.S. Department of Labor rule that ensures that religious organizations are not disfavored in government contracting. Why did you join this case?
Well,
maybe that's a softball.
No.
Start out with your for religious freedom. Tell us why this is important for Kentucky.
Well, it's important because, again, I think it reflects the values of the Commonwealth. Obviously, we fully respect and appreciate our First Amendment rights, and whether that's in public or private life, we want people to be able to freely associate with their faith, and obviously that is, again, important in Kentucky. And what the Department of Labor is essentially doing is, I used this earlier, but washing their hands of the responsibility of defending the worship and religious practices of people that engage in contracts with the Department of Labor. Myself and other attorneys general across the country said, no, we need to stand up for the First Amendment rights of contractors in this country. I think, again, it reflects the values of Kentucky. That's why we're involved in this. We want to make sure that any state or federal agency that is involved in contracting really gives a fair shake to those that have religious preferences that are included in their work.
Very good. Moving along, I know our time is running short. General Cameron, child protection laws. Your office supported House Bill 254, which protects Kentucky's children by enhancing penalties against child predators. This is what it says. It enhances penalties against child predators who possess, view, or distribute child sexual abuse material of a minor under the age of 12. Again, another issue that's difficult to talk about, but it's here. This stuff happens in Kentucky, happens across the country, but your office decided to tackle this issue and to support this bill. It did pass into law. Is this issue of gross child pornography, is this something you're seeing more of? You've been in office for some time now. What are you seeing out there? Tell us more about this.
Well, look, this is in response to some challenges that we have here in the Commonwealth as it relates to child abuse and exploitation. And so any additional tool that we can put in our toolbox to help deter this activity, or make sure that we are putting these bad actors away and enhancing those penalties, we're going to be in favor of in this office. It speaks to our responsibility to be a watchman at the gate and to make sure that we are looking out for the most vulnerable in our communities. And oftentimes children are in vulnerable positions where perhaps they don't know that they are in an abusive relationship or position. And so what this bill does really gives us the tools to make sure that we're able to confront these challenges going forward.
Very good. And of course that sends a message to pornographers or people even thinking about getting involved with child pornography that the state of Kentucky is serious about prosecuting it and that there are consequences to that. And that's, I think, an appropriate message. Our children are vulnerable. Our children need to be protected, and your office is taking the lead on that. Thank you for doing that, by the way. You have said publicly in the past where your faith, in fact, in our conversations, General Cameron, your faith compels you, motivates you, it's who you are. You don't separate it. It informs how you do life. It informs how you do your job. You recently recorded a message to be released for Good Friday, a message about the challenging time that we've been in. And tell us a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, well, it's been laid on our collective hearts here in the AG's office to make sure that people see that faith is important to us, that it helps inform the decisions that we make in this office, but that we really take this time during Resurrection Week and Passover and what have you to make sure that we're celebrating Christ, and to make sure that we are appreciative of the sacrifice that his son made in going to the cross and then being resurrected for our sins. And so this message is really about, even in the midst of great challenge and struggle, we can be grateful for the cross, we can be thankful for that sacrifice. And so we just wanted to share that collectively as the AG's office, to say that, again, even in the midst of great struggle, we can, again, take great solace in what happened on the cross for us over 2,000 years ago.
You know, I know there are some detractors who would criticize anybody in public office. They criticize me as well for asserting that faith does have a place in public life, that it does have a faith in a public servant's life. But if you just look at some of the principles of what Jesus talked about, loving your neighbors yourself, being kind to others, being gracious to others, I wonder if we really embrace those ideals, if how much different as a society we'd be.
Well, I talk a lot about our responsibility during the midst of this pandemic to be a good neighbor, and that is a principle that's right from the Bible. And one of the things that I focus on in this message is I was really proud of the way that pastors and congregations all across Kentucky. I recall last year sitting on a couch with my mom and wife Mackenzie watching Easter service, and Hebrews talks about not forsaking the assembly of believers, and I know pastors and congregations all across Kentucky took that charge seriously and that instruction seriously. And now, because pastors and congregations believed in their constitutional rights, stood steadfast by those constitutional rights, we're all going to be back, if we choose to, back in services this Sunday. And so it was a great reminder as we were working through this message to think about that.
And as you brought it up, it was just a year ago that we were in a very different situation where at the beginning of the shutdown, churches were told by Governor Beshear not to have in-person services. In fact, leading up to that, he had warned that he would send state troopers to church parking lots to take down license plate numbers and to report those to the local health departments and to fine people. Of course, that didn't go over well. There was a lawsuit, actually a couple of lawsuits eventually. Your office stood on behalf of religious freedom,
Yes, sir.
and your side prevailed.
Well, it is, and where we drew that courage, and that's why I talk in the message about pastors and congregations, we drew that from them because they stood up for their rights. They heeded the direction and instruction that's given in Hebrews about not forsaking the assembly. And because of that courage and because of that strength, if if congregations choose to, they can be back in service on Sunday, worshiping and again, just taking part in Resurrection Sunday services. And that's something exciting to talk about and to think about as we move into Sunday.
Yeah, very good. Well, General Cameron, we are just about out of time. I've enjoyed it. I don't know if you have any final words or any final thoughts you'd like to share with the viewers.
Well, look, I just say I appreciate. I started by saying that I appreciate just the encouragement and support that CPC and so many of your viewers have given to this office. It really strengthens us and gives us the backbone and strength that we need to make some pretty tough decisions. And so grateful to you all, and obviously, Richard, grateful to you. Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you. You keep up the good work.